Deutschlands östlicher Nachbar Polen kokettiert seit einiger Zeit mit der Atomkraft. Und immer dann, wenn Atomkraft ins Spiel kommt, wird neuerdings auch auf den Klimawandel hingewiesen. Auch in Polen, das seinen Strom überwiegend aus Braunkohle generiert. Ich freue mich, dass heute Dariusz Szwed, den ich gerne auf die Bühne bitte, bei uns ist und uns zeigen wird, dass es auch andere Möglichkeiten gibt, wenn es um Energieproduktion geht. Dariusz Szwed ist polnischer Grünenpolitiker, sozialer Aktivist und Wirtschaftswissenschaftler und wird uns Fragen zur Energiedemokratisierung beantworten, und zwar den politischen, sozialen und ökonomischen Aspekten. Darf ich bitten?
Can I use this mobile microphone? Thank you. I'm very thankful for inviting me here, and greetings from anti-nuclear Poland to anti-nuclear Upper Austria. I'm very, very happy to be here with you. The main point of my presentation is how to get power back to the people and how to get the green energy in hands of people. Because what we have in Poland is the situation where there is no support for nuclear power, for nuclear energy, but still, of the public, but still the government is pushing for having nuclear power. Because as you know, Poland is at the moment nuclear-free country as other non-nuclear countries like Austria. However, we already for the last 25 years we were discussing about having a nuclear power, and as you can see here, the support for it was increasing prior to Fukushima, and then it has decreased over the years after Fukushima, which means that Fukushima had a strong, very strong influence on the public. Despite the huge amount of money being spent on propaganda from our energy sector. It is extremely important to understand what the democratic political situation of Poland is. And that's why I put society versus energy monopoly in place. Because we can see that Polish energy system, energy sector, is as it used to be in Germany. 4 big companies controlling almost 100% of the energy sector. And it's, of course, mostly based on coal. Around 85–86% of energy produced in Poland, electricity produced in Poland, is electricity from coal. And what you can see, social-wise, is the very high cost of energy to people. We pay one of the highest level of energy price in Europe when we take the purchase parity of our society, of our pockets. So it means that we pay high costs of monopolistic situation of coal, which means that over 1 million of families are in the situation of so-called energy poverty. So it's a huge social and economic problem. And of course, our nuclear and coal lobby uses this rhetoric that nuclear may get the prices down, which of course it's not true. It's never going to happen. And I got a very good message to you that despite all these efforts of our big coal or energy, generally energy lobby, we already delayed by 7 years of our nuclear project. It was announced 5 years ago by the then Prime Minister Donald Tusk that there will be first nuclear power station by 2020 in Poland. Just a few days ago it was announced officially that the year will be 2027 at the thank you at the earliest stage. Why is it so? It's of course because of the costs. It's because of the very difficult situation now with the coal-based energy economy in Poland. Because as you know, or maybe you don't know, but our energy sector has huge problems with so-called coal bubble. So the overestimating the price the value of coal-based energy system. One of the biggest coal company in Poland, which is also one of the biggest in the European Union, lost over the 5 years time, lost 90% of its market value, 90%. So it means that coal is no longer an answer either. And we can see that it's still that our government is mainly pushed by the coal energy sector, which means that they are proposing mostly legislation which is in favor of coal and nuclear. And one of the issues now is to support nuclear power station with long-term feed-in tariffs, which means long-term subsidies for high price level. And it's also a big issue that we could get a lot of energy from so-called coal bed methane, which is now released to the atmosphere, producing a lot of problems of climate change, while we could collect this coal bed methane to produce energy and to produce heat. So still there is a lot to do with what we have rather than to build any new system which is costly, which is undemocratic, and which is really not what we would like, what we need. And it also, in case of methane, we have a lot of problems with threatening lives of our coal miners. So it has also a very good social aspect in terms of giving coal miners better working conditions. And as you can see, big energy companies, they use a lot of money, around 100 million euro a year, to use their propaganda to say that green energy is expensive, that green energy is not really any solution because when the wind does not blow, when the sun does not shine, and so on and so forth. So it's all the same stories all over Europe. The problem is that they're getting billions and billions of zlotys every year from our pockets for continuing what they're doing. So that's why we pay one of the highest level of energy in Europe. And then, which is also good news, we will have to close down around 6,000 megawatts of coal-based energy power stations, which have to be closed down because of the EU standards, because of the also being older, which means we have to replace them with some other options. And one of the options that we can do, even here in this room, as we can see, one of the bulb is already LED bulb, the other one is still the old-fashioned one, and we can replace all the bulbs in Poland with LED lamps, and it will produce the equivalence of 1,500 megawatts installed of the nuclear power station. So it's a huge amount of energy that we can avoid producing and avoid paying for, which means that we can save at least 3-4 billion euro a year from our pockets. Of course, it's not in the interest of the big power stations who sell energy to us. So we calculated that it's 100 times cheaper to replace lighting with LED lamps. It's 100 times less expensive than to build a block of nuclear power station in Poland. So it's a huge amount that they want to spend on it, while there is very little activity on promoting energy efficiency by consumers, by citizens of Poland, because of course it is not in the interest of big corporations related to the government. And it is obvious that you can see that we can lower bills of our citizens, of our consumers, which also means fighting against energy poverty. So it is a question, why do we have the government who is not really dealing with energy poverty, but rather helping big corporations to continue with getting lots and lots of money from our pockets as taxpayers and from our pockets as consumers. And what is also very important is that job creation is massive. We can see it already from Germany, where we have almost 400,000 jobs, green jobs in energy sector, while in Poland it's already, but still not a huge amount, of 35,000 people employed. The problem is that if you have 500 coal miners organized, coming to Warsaw, to the parliament, showing up and saying we want money, we want continuation of the system, then nowadays Prime Minister say, yes, no problem, 500 million zloty to your account, which is around 125,000 euro, 100 euro, 125,000 euro, while the green sector, energy sector, is not really organized to show up, as it happens in Berlin, for instance. I once tried to organize a demonstration of green energy sector, and 10 people showed up. While in Germany, a week before, in December 2014, there were 100,000 people showing up to support Energiewende. So it's really crucial that we show that people will benefit from the transition, energy transition, in terms of getting money, getting better air, getting jobs, but they need to show up, they need to protest, as we did 25 years ago, to get democracy. That's why we need energy democracy now. What is really possible now is, and what we would like to do, is to link between regions and cities all over the continent, all over Europe, to show that 100% energy, green energy is possible and is viable. And it's that we can share our experience and our knowledge about it. And we are very eager to work with other cities or regions like Upper Austria to achieve it, not having nuclear power and getting down with coal power. When we look at the so-called energy corpocracy, which is nowadays system in Poland and in many other countries of the region, I'm looking at my friend from Slovenia, which is probably having the same, or Czech Republic, having the same problems. It is extremely important to show the benefits, economic and social benefits, of getting to energy democracy. On this slide, you can see what benefits we can have from insulating houses instead of building new power station, whatever it is, coal-based, nuclear-based. And it's obvious, but it doesn't happen. There are some 5 million houses individual houses in Poland, and most of them, if you would look at this green-red scale, most of them would be completely red. As Mr. Sorry, I forgot your name. As you shown before, that we overuse energy, which is not only a problem of climate change, which is very difficult to translate into everyday life of Polish society, while telling them you would pay less for your everyday life would perfectly work. What is also important from social point of view is also job creation. In this slide you can see that it's 100 times more creating 100 times more jobs when we take this green direction into consideration. And it's also very important that it's decentralized all over the country. I would say that all 2,500 communes in Poland, called gminas, would get it. Not only those who have coal or those who have some other resources, but all of us, we can get it. So it's also an egalitarian way of achieving it, which is very important. And to give you a little bit of understanding of the situation now, it is not so bad from the green point of view yet anymore, because we already have some over 3,000 megawatts of installed capacity of wind. What is really unfortunate, it is that it's still owned by big corporations, whoever they are, international or national, which means that it's not really a transition, political, democratic transition. It's rather replacing old big installations with a bit smaller but still not democratically controlled. What we would need is more control of the society on this wind capacity too, in terms of not only communal, city-owned wind farms, but also cooperatives of citizens to get their profits back, rather than paying for this energy consumption to big corporations. Another good and very decentralized positive development is the solar heat, which Poland is one of the top installer, as Austria also, it was mentioned here that Austria is also developing well here. You can see that over the last years there was quite rapid development of installations of solar heat, which means that there is more and more independence from the centralized system. Why did this happen? Because it doesn't heat too much, too much the producers, the big producers of electricity. That's why they allowed for that to some extent, because it's local heat, so it's not so difficult for the economic situation. And some would say, I'm a dreamer. It's no way to get green 100%. I mean, really, I meet people like yourself, talking to them, and they say, no, this is impossible to get 100% from the sun, from wind, from wherever. So I calculated nowadays technology available on the market, that we would need around 1,000 square kilometers to get 100% of electricity in Poland nowadays only from the sun. So the only problem is, of course, the to keep this energy when it's needed. But still, technologically, it's possible to change overnight, or over 2 weeks. Just installation of those solar panels. And we calculated that of the price of Hinkley Point, for instance, those price would be 2 times lower for solar energy rather than for nuclear. So we can see it's cheaper, it's in our hands because we don't pay for energy anymore. We don't produce any waste. We don't have any big lobbyists to corrupt our politicians anymore. Yeah, this is the problem, probably. And Poland is also a very big producer of appliances in the European Union. It became, over the last 5-10 years, one of the biggest producers of appliances. Why don't we produce AA or A++ appliances rather than producing D or C or B appliances? It's also another political decision what kind of appliances we produce in Poland. And because we have 500 million consumer market in the European Union, it's a huge demand that we can meet with this production, creating jobs in Poland. It's also greenhouses, so it's a lot of different technologies that we can use and produce jobs at the local level. And I'm not sure whether you are aware of it, but Poland is also one of the top producer of graphene, which is also coal, type of coal. Graphene is a kind of flat type of coal that can, or carbon, sorry, that can be used also in photovoltaics technology in the future. And Poland is one of the top producer of industrial production of this type of carbon. And it may be that in the next few years we may become one of the biggest industrial producer of this substance. And let me read this because it's not very complicated, but I think it's worth reading the entire thing. Imagine fuel without fear. No climate change, no oil spills, dead coal miners, dirty air, devastated lands, lost wildlife. No energy poverty, no oil-fed wars, tyrannies, or terrorists. Nothing to run out. Nothing to cut off, nothing to worry about. Just energy abundance, being and affordable for all, forever. It was Amory Lovins in Reinventing Fire, because we are really reinventing another world, and another world is really possible. And this is Gdansk, Danzig in German. The city in Pomerania in Poland, around 100 kilometers away from the proposed nuclear power location. We don't need nuclear in Poland, we don't need nuclear in Europe, we don't need nuclear at all. Thank you.
Also herzlichen Dank, Dariusz Szwed, vor allem für diesen schönen Ausblick mit Reinventing Fire. Also ich habe Gänsehaut davon bekommen. Jetzt sind Sie noch einmal kurz dran, bevor wir in die Mittagspause gehen. Wenn Sie Fragen haben an Dariusz Szwed, nutzen Sie die Gelegenheit oder nutzen Sie dann später bei der Podiumsdiskussion. Aber wir sind sehr, sehr gut in der Zeit. Ich danke allen Referentinnen und Referenten an dieser Stelle einmal für das wirklich ganz, ganz tolle Zeitmanagement. Fragen an Dariusz Szwed, bitte gerne. Ja. Gibt es eine Frage vom Heinz Stockinger? Do you have a microphone?
Yes.
Thank you for this presentation. A political question, and maybe you can't answer it, but I guess you can, as nobody can here. What about the coming, it's only the president that you are electing, aren't you? So maybe his position is not so important for energy policy, but can you say what about him, the one who will be coming, and what his attitude is toward energy policy, especially renewables and efficiency?
It was really unfortunate that on last Sunday there was the debate, because it's the second round, so there are two candidates, two right-wing, very conservative ones, that were fighting who is really responsible for climate policy of the European Union and supporting it, who was supporting it more, and it was blaming each other for that. So you can see that, I'm sorry to say that, but democracy works only from the bottom up in Poland. It doesn't work from the top down in this regard. What we really need, we need all citizens of the European Union, at least of the European Union, of Europe, of the world, to really work together against those old-fashioned conservative politicians who want to stop us from really making this happen. So sorry to say that, I'm not going to vote to any of them, and that's it. But I'm going to vote and I'm going to work with people to get power back to our society, to our citizens. And a good news is, sorry for a longer answer, but I just became the advisor on foreign affairs to our newly elected mayor of Słupsk, which is in the neighborhood of Gdansk, in the northern Poland, in Pomerania. And he's convinced of 100% green Słupsk from energy, but not only energy perspective. And I'm really happy to advise him to fight for green region of Pomerania, which now is meant to be a location of at least one nuclear power station. But I think that together with hundreds of thousands of citizens, we will manage. Despite our politicians, whoever will be elected, we will win.
In der dritten Reihe haben wir noch eine Frage, die Paula.
Müller von der Wiener Plattform Atomkraft frei. Darf ich Deutsch fragen?
Müsst es einschalten.
Geht das? Jetzt geht's. Ah, okay, danke.
Nein, es geht nicht.
Okay, jetzt geht's.
Perfekt.
Ja, Sie haben gesagt, die Grünen sind nicht organisiert. Die Kohlearbeiter sind organisiert und machen Demos. Mich würde interessieren, wie weit sind Sie mit anderen Gruppen verlinkt oder in einer Kooperation? Und gibt es solche Gruppen in Polen?
When I meant Green, I don't mean the Green Party, because I'm no longer a member of the Green Party. I mean Green society as such, whoever they are, conservative, progressive, left-wing, right-wing. What I really mean is, it is now that we try to build, in Słupsk for instance, where we have a mayor, newly elected mayor, we try to show people their own interest, because it's very difficult, and I think it's all over the region of Central Europe, Czech Republic, probably Slovakia, Hungary, Baltic states, that we no longer believe in any democratic kind of settings. We lost our belief because of economic situation, which is harsh in a way. So what we would like to say to our citizen fellows in Słupsk, why don't you join us? Why don't you work with us to your own profit, to your own welfare, to your own progress? And it works already. We can see that participation level is getting higher in the city, while it is still not all over the country. So the main work we have to do now is to re-empowering people. I know it's not easy, but I think it's much easier when we say you can economically or socially benefit from it. Because when we're saying democracy is important, people just turn their back and say, you were saying that for 25 years, where we are now. So people are really disgusted with politicians, hopefully not myself, but truly, it's really a huge distrust against political elites. What we really need now, first we need new elites, like my fellow friend, politician of Mayor of Słupsk, Robert Biedroń, and we need more of this kind of really democratic politicians, but what we really need more even is we need people to reinvent democracy in a way that we all benefit from it. So it's a little bit, I can imagine, different from the situation in many, let's say, old member states of the European Union. But it is also that we can work together to reinvent the democratic regimes in Central and Eastern Europe, but also in some other countries. Because, for instance, the nuclear lobby in France, it's very successful in getting one president or the other on their board, because they're pushing for like jobs, like many other things. Although Mr. Hollande was much more into green rather than the previous president. So what I would see is I'm calling in triangle, green triangle again, which is France, Germany and Poland, because now we can see that Mr. Hollande is working a lot with Chancellor Merkel on green developments, to introduce green energy in France and to replace nuclear energy with renewables. And we can say we are just very similar to France in a way, because France is very much dependent on nuclear, while we are very much dependent on coal. Why don't we use the same kind of idea to lower down nuclear in France, coal in Poland, but not replacing coal with nuclear from France, for instance, because it's useless. So why don't we go the same way as France is going? With one exception. What we really need in Central and Eastern Europe, or Central Europe, is that we need energy efficiency first, because people are less rich there, so we really need to re-empower people with lower bills so that we have more time to think rather than to work all the time to pay our bills.
Okay.
Thank you.
Danke, Dariusz Szwed.